The Connection Show, inspiring hope, health, and healing, sponsored by Brave Heart Workshops, live with Jill Reynolds. And we are checking in today in San Marcos, California at the General Flynn ReAwakening Conference with Clay Clark. And I had the privilege just now in the media room of running into Matt Thayer. And he's from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and wants to share a little bit about himself. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, Jill. How you doing?
I am amazing.
Right?
It's beautiful in sunny California.
Oh, my gosh. San Diego in March. I mean, yeah. I mean, Canton, Ohio, in the middle of winter was rough.
A challenge.
It was a challenge, but the Ohioans showed up though. They were on fire. I mean, everybody was excited to be there, and it was a great crowd. But
right.
It was cold.
It was cold.
It
yeah.
was really cold. So San Diego is much balmier. Yeah,
little better.
A little bit better. Yeah.
So Matt, on the Connection Show,
Yeah.
we do things a lot different than the other podcasters here.
Okay,
One
great.
of the things that we do is we are inspired by God,
Yeah.
and God shared with me that our show is about hope in Him, health of our body for the Holy Spirit, and healing of our mind through healing the 4 generations of sin and curses. So one of the things that we love is that when Jesus walked the face of the earth, He loved to share parables, accounts, and stories for the sole purpose of transforming people's lives.
Yep.
And I truly am a believer, Matt, that story, when listened by audiences, and when the audience can connect that person's story with their own and find similarities instead of differences, that's where transformation truly begins.
Very true.
So, what I'd like for you to be, if you wouldn't mind, is vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely.
And transparent. And so we're going to go back to little Matt growing up. And I want you to share with us the good parts, the bad parts, the secret parts of your life, and what God's done through that pain and struggles and goodness.
Wow.
And led you into the amazing human being He has designed you in as an adult.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, it's interesting because my company's name is Speropictures, which is actually Latin for hope. And we're very much about creating stories of hope, which is interesting. So, God has put a real hope message on my life. I'm actually a filmmaker, and I created a documentary called ReAwakening, which is just really about the event and what's going on in all of these tours and everything else, and that's why I'm here. Let's see. I've been, actually, it's very interesting. I've been, let's see, I'm trying to think back. Well, you just really kind of threw a curveball at me. I haven't had anybody ask me that question, so good job. I grew up homeschooled, actually. I grew up, and I love that. My mom and dad taught me how to be courageous because their belief systems were very different than a lot of other people's at the time. They were kind of early adopters on the homeschool front, and so they really believed that they didn't want to put my sister and I into public school at the time, and they took on the challenge of running their business from home, and then also raising us and then teaching us from home. And I can't tell you how much that has influenced me over the years. Really, just not only the education that they afforded us, and the reliance on God. I watched my parents go through a lot growing up. They decided that they were going to move from Las Vegas, Nevada, up to Montana when I was 10. And being 10 years old, I decided to go with them. And
that's a big transformation.
It was a big
Vegas to Montana.
Yeah. When I tell people I was born in Las Vegas, people are usually like, "Really?" People are born there.
So from Vegas strip joints to Yellowstone, Montana.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. So we went up to Montana, and my dad was just always very inventive when it came to providing for the family, and watched him go from everything from, he's an upholsterer by trade, but when he was trying to get that up and running, he would pick rocks out of the fields. He would go, he actually created a shoe shine stand up at the airport, and he was just very willing to go in and do whatever he needed to do to provide for the family, and that was just always very inspiring to me to see that. And and it's interesting because some people would be embarrassed, by their mom and dad, being in that station. But it just was really inspiring to me that, they relied on God and then pulled up their bootstraps and did whatever they needed to do to provide for us and provide for my sisters. And then, also, doing the hard thing, which was, to educate us from home and not pawning us off on some sort of public school system, and teaching us how to think and teaching us how to learn. And that's always just, stuck with me my entire life.
So through that life of the grace of your family, can you share a little deeper, if you wouldn't mind, Matt, of what struggles you felt, even though there was so much love? It sounds like you had a blessed family. With that, though, you and I know the Bible says, in this world there will be trouble. So what painful things did you go through? Sometimes, even when you're homeschooled, you have maybe the pain of not feeling as connected, or anything else that you can see in your family of origin that goes back to grandfathers, great-grandfathers, parents, of pain and struggles that you saw in the family structure.
Oh, well, I actually lost friends, during that time, because my mom and dad, were considered kooks. And so I remember one time, crying to my mom and dad when I was 12 years old because, my friends weren't allowed to play with me anymore because my mom and dad, their friends had broken off relationship with them. And, and that was, that was really hard to go through. But, and there were times where, as I grew up, where there was just times where I felt, alone or misunderstood by people because of the way that I would look at the world or outlook on the world or whatever. And the devil definitely did, come in and try to take me out a couple of times. We went through, because of some of that stuff. I went through a divorce when I was in my 20s, and ultimately ended up having to deal with broken family, type situations with raising my kids and everything else. But God was good and brought me an amazing second wife, and we've had just an amazing blended family now. But there has been challenges because of that. Of being, in a place where it's not ideal. You know what I mean? It's like, God hates divorce because it definitely causes fracturing in families and causes more issues beyond just the mom and the dad. And so definitely going through some of that, even with my own couple of my own biological children right now. But the thing is that it's just seeing God's faithfulness through that, and how He never gives up on us.
Yep.
He never gives up on us, and He's always right there as soon as we turn around and say, hey, I handled that wrong, I did that wrong, I totally screwed that up. And He's like right there, and He's like, you know what, I might not be able to completely reverse that or completely fix that, but I'm going to walk with you through it, and I'm going to work everything all for the good.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I know I like to dig down further, because I really do believe from my heart that when we are willing to share the pains in our life, that's where transformation begins. Because, I went to an event years ago in the 80s, Matt, with the who's who in recovery world, the Patrick Carnes for sexual addiction, and Judy Hollis for eating disorders, and Claudia Black for adult children of alcoholics. So I was at that event, and I heard a phenomenal story called Codependency in the Looking Good Family. It looks good, it smells good, but where's the pain?
Right.
So when we're willing to be vulnerable, and it's so easy to grace the stages with our wonderful lives, but when we can go down deeper, that's where there's connection. Because, we could all sit around and be graced with the wonderful parts of our life. But so I heard, as you shared, the story of losing friendships at 12. and then the marriage.
Yep.
I saw a pattern there, and I don't want to put the words into your mouth, but you help me in the audience with the word that comes by. But I was getting this feeling of shame or embarrassment that may have come over you and the family. The shame of, my parents won't let me hang out, or embarrassed that you couldn't do things. And then that shame that kind of permeates from the evil one when a divorce comes in. If that's not your word, what word would you feel comes and resonates with you of generational pain and struggles? What word or burden?
Oh no, I think that shame was very much there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, and just but it's really all about going back to that identity, and listening for the voice of the Father and what He calls you.
Yep.
And so
there's holy shame too, because sometimes I think that especially Christians get into this rut of feeling like a burden is something that you casting out because it's evil. Yep. And so I don't look at it that way anymore as a Christian. I look at some of these parts that came in were actual protectors, and you being into filmmaking. One of my favorite films is Inside Out, the animated film, and that's the essence of humanity, where this little girl was her pushing down the parts because she was told by her mom, don't feel that way.
Yep.
So when we go through life pushing down the shame and pushing this down, other things pop up and our world start to cave in. And so when we're able to come to that part with grace, then blessings come in to fruition. Yes. Would you not agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah. No, you got to be honest. You got to be vulnerable. You got to be open. And then what happens is that because like you said, when you push that down, it's like a beach ball underneath the pool, and it's going to pop up somewhere, and you're not going to be able to keep it down, and it
usually pops up with the ones we love the most.
It does,
and then it's harder, and then another part comes out that
you
got to repair.
Yeah, it does, and that's why it's so important. It's so important to get your identity from the Lord. It's so important to get your identity from Him. Spend your time with Papa and hear His voice, and hear the identity that He drapes on you. Right, because when you lean into that, like for example, like I said at the beginning, God has spoken hope over my life, and whenever I fall into despair or I lean into that shame or anything like that, it just gets worse. But if I lean into that hope, if I lean into it, even though it doesn't always make sense, even though right now, like what you're seeing, like what's happening in life, and you look at it and you're like, factually, what I'm seeing doesn't feel very hopeful, but inside the truth is telling me that I'm supposed to align myself with hope. When I do that personally, that's when I feel like all of a sudden I see things shift and change around me. And so what I've encouraged people, to do is to, just ask the Holy Spirit, like what do you think of me? Who do you say that I am? And He will give you that identity. And oftentimes He gives you an identity that's just so crazy and so outside of anything that you would think or imagine. But that's usually because that usually means that He's speaking, because it's outside of what you can think or imagine. And so when you lean into that and you really actually believe Him, that's where faith comes in, right? And Jesus said that. He said He didn't. It's interesting, when He said, when the Son of Man returns, will I find faith on the earth? Right? Will I find people that are courageous enough to believe the outlandish things that I've said about them?
And will I find life? Because when Jesus lives in us, there's life.
Yep.
And so when He returns, will there be life? And He'll seek out the life, because the death will be apparent.
Yep.
The death will be apparent, but where will the life be?
Where will the life be? Yep.
And that's where faith is, because He's in us.
Yep.
So let's transition, because I know you have to speak shortly. So share with the audience what you're doing now currently, and what website or how they can connect with you if they want to hire you to speak, or just connect with you in general.
Well, you can go to ReAwakeningSeries.com. We've actually created episode 1 of the first of 4 in a series of, it's a documentary series about the ReAwaken events. And so in episode 1, we get to know Clay Clark a little bit better, and General Flynn, Pastor Artur Pawlowski, Sean Foyt's also in there. There's a whole host of people. We've interviewed like over 82 people from this whole event, and there's still more that we need to do. But we've decided to go with the Chosen model. You know, how the Chosen put out the film and the series for free, and then just ask people to pay it forward. That's what we're doing. So if you go to ReAwakeningSeries.com, you can watch the entire episode for free. We want you to share it. We want people to, because it really is, it's not just, people say, oh, is this Clay's story, or is this a story about General Flynn? No, it's a story about God, because God is doing this.
Yep.
And if anybody has been to one of these ReAwaken events, you really can't leave without knowing that God is doing something extraordinary, that revival is happening, that it's coming in this very interesting way where there's this meld between the spiritual and kind of this governmental, political thing that's going on right now, but God is moving, and that's what we're trying to document in these series. And so if anybody can help, there's a donate button, and they can go in and pay it forward, and you can help us get to episodes 2, 3, and 4. We're actually in the process of editing episode 2 right now, and it's just a lot of work. I mean, I'm a filmmaker, and you know, there's these storytellers, these amazing storytellers that have been in the Hollywood, or you know, been a part of like streaming platforms or whatever, and we just don't want to do that anymore. We don't want to be a part of that garbage anymore. We want to separate ourselves out, and we want to create something extraordinary and new, and actually use storytelling for its intended purpose to bring catharsis and not psychological damage.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're about.
That's amazing. So everyone, you know, we are here to love on each other in this world and support each other. So please go to his site and definitely let's look at this and support this to get this ReAwaken documentary out to the world. So I'm so grateful you came on. I know you're busy and you're running, but you took some time for us to really get to know you.
Thank you, Jill.
You know,
I really
for
appreciate
me,
it.
I do business myself, buying products when I know someone and I'm connected. And so thank you for your grace.
Absolutely. My pleasure. My
Awesome.
pleasure.
Thanks,
Jill.
Have a blessed day, everyone. Thank you.